The official story was finished before the body was cold. Everyone believed the report was accurate. A dangerous teen, a justified shooting. Case closed. The mistake was small. A camera left running. 43 seconds no one expected the public to see. For 13 months the system held. Then the footage surfaced. This is a real American crime story about what happens when the paperwork says one thing and the video says another. On the night of October 20th, 2014, the Chicago Police Department shot a 17-year-old boy named Laquan McDonald. Within hours, they had a story. It was clean, it was simple, and almost every official who touched it agreed on the same version of events. The teenager was dangerous. He lunged at officers with a knife. They had no choice. That story held for 13 months. 13 months during which an entire city, its mayor, its police superintendent, its prosecutors moved forward as if the matter were settled, as if the facts were clear. Then a judge ordered the release of a dashcam video. 43 seconds of footage. And in those 43 seconds, nearly everything the public had been told collapsed. But here's what should keep you up at night. It's not just that the official story was wrong. It's that dozens of people, officers, supervisors, investigators exposed to some version of what actually happened, exposed to evidence that contradicted the narrative, exposed to the body on the pavement and the number of shell casings scattered across the asphalt. And not one of them broke rank. Not one of them said publicly, "That's not what happened." For over a year, the system held, not because no one knew, because knowing wasn't enough. The Laquan McDonald case isn't just a story about a shooting. It's a story about what happens after, the paperwork, the phone calls, the institutional machinery that activates the moment a trigger is pulled and a body falls. Most police shootings in America never produce video. Most never reach a courtroom. Most are resolved in the space between an officer's statement and an investigator's willingness to accept it. This case matters because for once there was a recording, and because the distance between what that recording showed and what officials reported reveals something about how truth gets managed in systems designed to protect their own. It also matters because it reshaped Chicago. It ended careers. It launched the first murder conviction of a Chicago police officer for an on-duty shooting in half a century. And it launched a federal investigation that concluded the Chicago Police Department engaged in a pattern of excessive force and civil rights violations. All of it traced back to a video most people in power tried very hard to make sure you'd never see. Let's go back. October 20th, 2014, a little after 9:40 p.m. A trucking company on the southwest side of Chicago calls 911 to report someone breaking into vehicles in their yard. The suspect is described as a young black male carrying a knife. Officers respond. They find Laquan McDonald walking south on Pulaski Road. He's 17. He has PCP in his system. He's carrying a small knife, a 3-inch folding blade. He is not running toward anyone. He is not charging. He is walking. He punctures the tire of a squad car as he passes it. He keeps walking. Multiple officers are now on scene. They follow him at a distance. They call for a taser unit. The taser unit is en route but hasn't arrived yet. Then Officer Jason Van Dyke pulls up. He's been on the force for about 14 years. He exits his vehicle. Within 6 seconds, Van Dyke opens fire. He fires 16 rounds. The first shot drops Laquan McDonald to the ground. The next 15 hit him while he is on the pavement. Several of them cause his body to visibly spin. Forensic analysis later shows some rounds entered while McDonald was already lying flat, essentially motionless. The entire shooting takes approximately 14 to 15 seconds. 16 bullets into a teenager who was on the ground after the first one. No other officer on scene that night fired a single round. Now watch what happens next. This is where the case becomes something larger than one officer's decision. Within hours, the department's account takes shape. The reports describe McDonald lunging at officers, swinging the knife in an aggressive manner. Van Dyke's partner, Officer Joseph Walsh, supports this version. The report suggests the shooting was justified, that Van Dyke acted in response to an imminent deadly threat. Detective David March leads the investigation. He interviews Van Dyke, he reviews the dashcam footage, and he closes the investigation, ruling the shooting justified. The Independent Police Review Authority, IPRA, Chicago's civilian oversight body at the time, also begins what is supposed to be an independent investigation. It will take them months, then more than a year. They do not release findings. They do not contradict the department's account. Meanwhile, the city enters settlement talks with the McDonald family. In March 2015, 5 months after the shooting, and notably before the family even files a lawsuit, the city council approves a $5 million settlement. $5 million, paid quietly, with the condition the family agrees not to publicly release the dashcam footage. Think about that timing. The city was willing to pay $5 million for an incident its own investigators had ruled justified. If the shooting was clean, if the officer acted within policy, why would you proactively offer the family of the deceased that kind of money, with a confidentiality clause attached to the video? The answer, of course, is that someone had seen the video. Multiple someones, and they understood what it showed. A freelance journalist named Brandon Smith filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the dashcam footage. The city refused. Smith sued, and in November 2015, a Cook County judge ordered the city to release the video to the public. The footage comes from the dashcam of a trailing squad car. The angle is wide. The image is grainy. There's no audio for the first portion, but what it shows is unambiguous. Laquan McDonald is walking down the center of the road. He is moving away from the officers. He is not lunging. He is not charging. His body language is not aggressive. It's avoidant. He appears to be trying to walk past or around the officers. He veers away from them. And then Van Dyke starts shooting. McDonald falls after the first shot, and then the camera keeps recording as rounds continue to hit his body on the ground. Small puffs of debris or smoke rise from the pavement around him. His limbs shift with the impacts. It goes on, far longer than you expect it to, far longer than you want it to. The video was released on November 24, 2015. Within hours, Jason Van Dyke was charged with first-degree murder. Within days, the Chicago Police Superintendent, Gary McCarthy, was fired. Within weeks, the U.S. Department of Justice announced a civil rights investigation into the entire Chicago Police Department. 13 months of institutional silence cracked open in 43 seconds. But the video didn't just contradict the official account, it raised a much harder question. How did the official account survive as long as it did? Start with the officers on scene. At least 8 officers were present that night. Their reports aligned with Van Dyke's version. McDonald was aggressive, he lunged, the shooting was necessary. But the video shows something entirely different from what those reports describe. This wasn't a case of different perspectives on a chaotic scene. This was a coordinated narrative that bore almost no resemblance to the recorded reality. Then there's the matter of the Burger King. A Burger King restaurant near the scene had exterior security cameras. Officers went to the restaurant that night and spent time in the manager's office where the surveillance equipment was stored. When investigators later reviewed the footage, approximately 86 minutes of video from the relevant time period was missing. The manager told reporters he believed the officers had tampered with the system. The department denied it. An FBI forensic analysis was inconclusive, citing the possibility of a system malfunction, but the gap existed, and it was precisely the window that mattered. Then there's Detective March, who led the investigation. He interviewed witnesses who contradicted the officers' accounts. He had access to the dashcam video, and he still signed off on a conclusion that the shooting was justified. He later became one of 3 officers indicted on charges of conspiracy, official misconduct, and obstruction of justice for allegedly coordinating false reports. The trial of these 3 officers, Van Dyke's partner Joseph Walsh, Detective March, and Officer Thomas Gaffney, ended in acquittal in January 2019. A judge found them not guilty, reasoning in part that their statements, while inconsistent with the video, did not conclusively prove intentional conspiracy. The distinction is important and also, for many Chicagoans, infuriating. The system acknowledged that the reports were wrong. It just couldn't or wouldn't conclude that the wrongness was deliberate. Van Dyke's trial began in September 2018. The prosecution's case was, in many ways, the video itself. They played it, they slowed it down, they walked the jury through each second. The defense argued that Van Dyke perceived genuine threat, that McDonald had PCP in his system, that he was armed, that you cannot judge an officer's split-second decision from the comfort of a courtroom. They brought in use of force experts who testified that Van Dyke's fear was reasonable. This is the standard defense in officer-involved shooting cases, and it almost always works. Juries defer to police judgment. They accept the premise that officers operate in conditions civilians can't fully understand. Historically, convictions in these cases are extraordinarily rare. But this jury watched the video. They watched it multiple times, and on October 5, 2018, they found Jason Van Dyke guilty of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery, 1 for each shot. It was the first time in over 50 years that a Chicago police officer had been convicted of murder on on-duty shooting. Van Dyke was sentenced to 81 months, 6 years and 9 months. He served less than 4 years before his release in February 2022. 16 shots, 17-year-old victim, less than 4 years in prison. The McDonald family called the sentence a slap in the face. Legal analysts noted that the 16 aggravated battery convictions, each carrying a potential sentence of 6 to 30 years, were effectively absorbed into the concurrent sentencing structure. The judge had discretion. He used it. The Department of Justice released its findings in January 2017. The report was damning. It found that the Chicago Police Department engaged in a pattern and practice of using excessive force, particularly against Black and Latino residents. It found inadequate training, insufficient accountability, and a culture in which officers understood, implicitly if not explicitly, that excessive force would not be meaningfully punished. The report described a system where investigations into officer conduct were designed, structurally, to reach conclusions favorable to the officers being investigated, where civilian oversight bodies lacked independence, where the code of silence wasn't a conspiracy, it was a culture, a default setting. Chicago entered into a federal consent decree in 2019 requiring sweeping reforms to its police department. Those reforms are ongoing. Progress has been slow, contested, and, depending on who you ask, either genuinely transformative or largely cosmetic. Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who had been in office during the entire 13 months between the shooting and the video's release, was widely accused of suppressing the footage to protect his 2015 re-election campaign. The video was released 11 days after that election. Emanuel denied any connection. He did not seek a third term. His successor, Lori Lightfoot, ran explicitly on the platform of police accountability. She, too, struggled with the department. She, too, lost her re-election bid. The case didn't fix Chicago. It would be dishonest to say it did. But it ripped something open. It forced a reckoning, not a complete one, not a final one, but a reckoning that couldn't have happened without those 43 seconds of footage from a dashcam in a trailing squad car that, by policy, was supposed to be recording. Here's what stays with me about the Laquan McDonald case. It's not the shooting itself, as horrific as it was. It's not even the cover-up, as systematic as it appears to have been. It's the math. One shooting, one teenager, one officer who pulled the trigger, and then dozens, maybe hundreds of people who touched the case afterward. Officers who filed reports, a detective who closed the investigation, supervisors who signed off, attorneys who negotiated a settlement, city officials who approved it, an oversight body that sat on its findings, and for 13 months, every single one of them either accepted, ignored, or actively maintained a version of events that a single piece of video would later shatter. No one needed to be part of a grand conspiracy. They just needed to do what the system expected of them: file the report, sign the form, move to the next case. Don't ask questions that will create problems for people above you. Don't contradict colleagues who might one day be the only thing standing between you and a similar situation. The system didn't fail. That's the uncomfortable realization. The system worked exactly as it was designed to work. It absorbed the shooting. It generated a narrative. It produced paperwork. It reached a conclusion. It moved on. The only thing it wasn't designed for was a camera that couldn't be talked out of what it saw. And the question this case leaves you with, the one that doesn't resolve neatly, is simple. How many times has the same machinery operated the same way in the same city and in others on nights when there was no dashcam, no FOIA request, no judge ordering transparency? How many times has the system worked exactly as designed and no one ever knew to ask whether the story it told was true? There's no number for that. There's no way to calculate it. There's just the knowledge that for 13 months in one of the largest cities in America, the official record said one thing and the truth was something else entirely. And if not for a freelance journalist, a lawsuit, and a judge, that's where it would have stayed.